132. I'm Liz Sheehan. I'm the chair of the Program Performance and Evaluation Committee. We'll start with welcome and introductions. So welcome, and let's do our introductions. We'll start on this side.
I'm Diane Fleet with Greenhouse 17.
Marty Jones, Community Action Council.
Mackenzie Cooksey with Mount Comprehensive Care.
Bill Pauley with Kentucky Youth Justice Center.
David Shad with the Hope Center.
Alicia Branham on the board for the homelessness prevention.
Shannon Derrick, Passport by Melina.
Jeff Herron, manager of LFUCG's Office of Homelessness Prevention and Intervention.
Lola Still, UK Healthcare, Eastern State Hospital.
Thank you everyone for being here. The second thing on our agenda, because our first thing was introductions, the second thing is our approval of the meeting minutes from last time. Does anyone have any, the minutes are in your packet, so does anyone have any corrections or notes that they would like to make? Okay, seeing none, I could take a motion for approval.
So moved.
And I need a second.
I'll second.
And then this is a full membership vote. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, that passes. So thank you all. Then third on our agenda starts our program reviews for today. So as a reminder, everybody, each presentation has 10 minutes to present, and then we have time for questions after each one. The first up today is Community Action Council. You have two programs to present, so let's start with the Crisis and Housing Support for Youth Rapid Rehousing Program.
And just a note for all presenters, no one expressed wanting to do a PowerPoint or anything, and it's not required, but I did bring my laptop if you need that capability.
Okay, turn it over to you, Marty.
Okay. So this is a Crisis Housing and Support for Youth, or we call it CHEESY. And it is a joint component program, meaning there is a transitional housing and a rapid rehousing component with it. We do partner with Arbor Youth Services, as the target population is transition age youth between the ages of 18 and 24. The program year runs from March 1st to the following end of February. We got an extra day this year with leap year. And just the goals of the program align with the HUD performance measures. And then we help clients obtain housing as quickly as possible and help them stabilize and maintain their housing while in the project, and hope that they can maintain, with the goal to maintain their housing once they exit the program. I think in the past I divided between transitional housing and rapid rehousing, but the way the requirements are, we have anyone who enters our transitional housing enters our rapid rehousing as well, so the numbers are sort of the same as far as like the total numbers. So just for ease, just to make it a little less cumbersome, it's just easier to report this way. The targets that we had to serve were, as far as persons was 16 and households was 12. We exceeded those by a little bit this program year. We did make some adjustments. In the past, I know we had reduced the size of the number of our transitional housing units based on the numbers that we had as far as utilizing that. So we increased the numbers this year through a budget amendment in terms of the rapid numbers that we did through rapid rehousing. So we were able to serve more, and that adjustment helped us in other ways as far as like spend out and things as well. And as far as the demographics go, it was somewhat even as far as the gender, obviously the age. There was one that was over the age of, or was 25, but they actually turned 25 after entering the program, so that sort of a outlier, but the remainder were 24 and under, just because of the target population. As far as the length of time from project entry to move-in date, it was pretty quick, 20 days, which was really good. Our exits to permanent housing were a little bit lower than the goal, so we were at 60 instead of 60%, where the target is 90%. Returns to homelessness were right under 10%, and I hope I calculated that right. So as far as the percentage goes, but there was one client who exited the program to a positive destination, meaning they exited to some type of permanent housing destination that returned to homelessness. And that's 1 out of the 11 positive exits since March 1st of 21. We did not have, as far as income gains this past year, that was 0 to report. I think that number has been higher within this program. I think last year it was like at 43%, but this year it was a little bit lower. We did have a lot of new participants that were newly housed this year, so that could have played a factor that they came in and just were were still newish or newer to the program, so the gains or their income didn't increase as much. And just as far as the APR, it was submitted on time. Did note again, as it did last time, as far as the matter with our change in CFO, in which there was a delay in access to ELOCs, as which the draws are made. So as far as the funds drawn quarterly, they did not happen, but that was because we didn't have access to ELOCs for a number of months. And the funds were recaptured. It was less than 10% of the total funding, though, and that was, like I said, with some of the adjustments we made with the budget amendment, we were able to spend the majority of the funding, and much more than we had in the past, just with some of the challenges that we had. And then in the section, we do said before, we do look at our outcomes related to performance measures in HMIS and review those periodically, just to see where we're at and kind of make adjustments or improvements where we need to, or see what things we may be doing right, and try to continue those. The council does have an officer of diversity, equity, and inclusion to help make sure that our policies are culturally informed and inclusive, as well as promoting education with CAC staffs on related topics. We're still no update on the community needs assessment. I think that's still kind of in process. And the 5-year strategic plan, or at least the part that was pertaining to housing, I mentioned before, one of those goals was to get the staff with lived experience, and we don't have that. I haven't met that goal yet, but that is one thing that we would like to do. So that's pretty much what I got for you.
Okay. So we can open up for discussion or questions or comments.
So Marty, what, with the returns to homelessness being, exits to permanent housing, that's what I was looking at, being lower than you expected, what were some of the reasons for that?
I mean, it's always tough, because especially if you're looking at a year, a matter of 1 or 2 people can affect that. Just with the small numbers can affect that percentage. It was just a little bit lower. For one, it's just in general, I think just this population, there are some unique challenges to working with transition age youth and helping to maintain their housing. But I think in particular this, I think there were some challenges with as far as just participation in the program and some things that made it difficult for them to continue in the program.
Is AUD, is that autism?
Alcohol use disorder.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's just some of the. I'm sorry, I kind of just skipped over that part. My bad.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but that's just some of the physical and mental health conditions that were noted at the time of entry for participants.
I was going to kind of ask a similar question in terms of what might have facilitated some less than positive exits, and seeing also that you touched on the income growth. I know you said some of that was new participants. So for stayers, you might have had folks who didn't reach annual assessment and therefore were not included in the calculation. In terms of leavers, do you have any sense of maybe was that a part of a factor of them not exiting to a more positive destination?
I don't think so. I didn't check to see, or didn't make a note as far as how many exited with income versus whether they had a gain or increase. So the 0% is obviously the gain or increase in income, and not necessarily indicative that doesn't mean they necessarily didn't have any income. So I don't know, and I can't remember exactly. Like I said, I didn't make a note as far as the total number, but I don't know. Like I I guess to answer your question, I'd have to go back and look to see specifically.
And just kind of a follow-up to that is going to be, is there anything that you guys are observing that might be helpful for us to know in terms of developing more strategies around income growth? One of the things that I'm really wanting for us to do is continue to view that COC application and our performance measures, all of those things, as an ongoing process and not something that we only address once a year.
Yeah.
And so we can continue to formalize those strategies, beef them up. And employment's one of the things in particular that I would really like for us to do more around, because I think it increases a lot of different opportunities. I think it opens up avenues to where people don't have to have placement in a coordinated entry resource or program, but also that those that are enrolled in that kind of a resource have an ability to potentially more quickly transition to self-sufficiency. Is there, and I understand there may not be, but is there anything that you would share that I can try to use in that effort?
I think, yeah, in income, I don't know that definitely based on our programs. I'm not sure I'm the expert in that, but I mean, I think just links to some type of supportive employment. I think maybe some more formal partnerships or agreements, or ways to utilize those types of services would be beneficial. I think just to gain income, even job training, or maybe utilizing some voc rehab types of resources as well. Making those links. There's always going to be a challenge with these populations that we serve. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I just had the thought of independence, just noticing that half of your clients have physical or mental health conditions or disabilities. Independence Place, I feel like, does a lot of work with employment. That might be a partnership to look at.
That would be one. I think sometimes I can't speak for everybody, but sometimes the income kind of gets lost in the grand scheme of everything that's happening when you're trying to get somebody housed and you're working with. Typically there's other challenges and things that you're working with participants on. Sometimes that kind of gets lost in that. I think, in particular with youth, and specifically, just they're less likely to have, I guess, SISD. I think in general, just from my experience, or at least their experience, has been this less common than it is with older population. So that creates an additional challenge to try to get before that.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Would you like to do the next one? That is Project Independence, the Rapid Rehousing Program.
Sorry, you have to endure another presentation by me. So sorry. So yeah, this is we're running our Project Independence program, or we just call it as PI. It is a rapid rehousing program. There is not a specific target population. We serve individuals, couples, and households with children. We do follow housing, which is cheesy, but we do follow housing first model. We try to be as low barriers as possible. And the goals are very similar to all of our rapid housing and all the other housing programs, and that's just to help clients obtain housing as quickly as possible, and help them stabilize and maintain their housing on their project so that they can maintain their housing once they exit the program. So in terms of the numbers, the number of persons served was lower than what was projected. Our number of households served was a little more. The number of persons always can vary based on the size of the households that we have, so that we don't have a lot of control on that, but the number of households that we did serve throughout the year were a little higher. We did have a large number of participants that came in this past year. We've had some challenges with the staffing, and for one program year we were able to maintain our staff for this program, so that made a huge difference in terms of the numbers that we were able to serve. But so that we're happy with the number that we did serve for the year. In terms of demographics, it's pretty even split between gender. As far as the ages go, Most fell with either under the age of 18 or between the ages of 25 to 54 range, and usually the children that were under 18 were with families that we had housed through the program. But there was a majority of participants whose race was white, although we did have several who were black or identified as with black and Hispanic. And then you can see some of the physical mental health conditions that were reported at entry as far as the participants that we served through this program. As far as the length of time from entry to move-in date, it was a little bit longer definitely longer than what we would like. 30 days is a pretty big target, but a pretty hard target, but it was a little bit higher. We did have a few households that were a little harder to get housing, so that kind of bumped that number up a little bit. Exits of permanent housing were a little lower. I did have some information, like as far as we did have a couple of families that, one in particular who there was a separation as far as the children were removed from the household and the parent was arrested, and then another issue where one participant was taken to long-term care, which kind of impacted that number a little bit. Overall, I did look back, and so overall over the last several years, we're averaging around 83%. So it is a little lower than sort of the average that we've had over the past several years. Returns to homelessness was at 6%, and again, I don't know if I calculated that right, but there were 2 clients who exited deposit destinations out of a total of 33 since January 1st of 2021. We did have a little more success with incomes this past year, which was good. In terms of APR, we did submit it on time. We did spend out the funds. And we had the same issue as far as the drawing the funds down with the CFO. And then as far as the ongoing evaluation improvement, it's kind of the same as the last one.
Any questions, any comments for this program?
I'm going to have something. One thing was you'd mentioned regarding exits to permanent housing. Was it 83% from the average that you looked at for a couple different years?
Yeah, I ran it, was making notes, and I ran it back from, I think, since January of 2018 through the end of the last program year, and it was around 83%. So I think that fits with typically where it seems like we fall right around 80% most of the time, but yeah.
Okay. Do you have any sense of what the factors involved in that are?
That's why it was lower this year. Yeah, I know there were one household in particular that was very challenging, and there were some things that happened or that that became aware of as far as like some mental health complications and some violence issues that were occurring between the adult child and parent. So that did impact. And I mentioned there was also a family which there was some criminal activity, and so the parent was arrested and children were removed from the home. And another participant who had some ongoing health conditions, and we worked with them for a while, and it kind of got to the point where it was clear that they weren't going to be able to return. So that kind of those are three of the ones that impact. And again, it's within a year, just 2 or 3 households can impact the percentage, in a negative way.
Sounds like a lot of life event stuff. Is there anything that you think is possible for us to address? For example, is there anything where I know sometimes we get the feedback that acuity might be higher than what was indicated, or if there's a certain type of resource that if we have present might better stabilize situations?
Right. I think the acuity, yeah. But I know that's an ongoing thing. Is sometimes if we ask for that, does it capture since it's self-reported, you don't always capture that. And that was definitely the instance for the one household. I think there was, and we had made some attempts, but that was definitely a factor in that. As far as the others go, I mean, it's always difficult. I mean, just in this experience, like with our EFH program, a lot of times we don't know because obviously families are not going to share all the time that they may have an open case with with CPS, or they may be doing things that we're not aware of until we get more familiar with them or something like that happens. So I don't know. As far as like systemic, I don't know what specific things could address or assist with those types of things. I mean, it may be maybe a clearer way to communicate or address if somebody, especially if somebody is that we house somebody with, we or whoever houses someone in rapid rehousing, and it's identified like, hey, this might be going really bad, so maybe it's just me, I don't know, but maybe make that process a little clearer, a little easier, like how can we address this, or maybe try to get some supports or things around that would be, that could help them maybe move on to more intensive or a different type of housing that would be more appropriate.
And then, not to monopolize the time, but in terms of length of time from entry to move-in, obviously on an average, it's definitely out of line with the target. I know the target is difficult in this rental market, but I would still hope to see something a little closer. Did you do anything like, is there a median calculation or something so we could understand maybe how one or two outliers might have?
Yeah, I did the median. It was not 126, I don't think. I had it, I did it with the APR and I forgot to jot it down. It was lower. I mean, we did have some outliers. I know there was, like I said, the one that actually had the healthcare issues never actually got housed, and that was, that was because of their health issues. There was another participant who, because of their criminal background check, there were some felony charges that were pending, and so while those they later were like reduced to misdemeanor charges, which helped missing in terms of getting them housed, but waiting for that process to go, and then but it was more so just, there were some that were obviously housed a lot faster, but there were a few that were sort of outliers like that had some more unique challenges in terms of housing. So, and we also had some newer staff coming in, and so that's always, I think, a learning curve in terms of how quickly they can kind of, not that they can become more familiar. The more longer they are in the position, the more familiar they can become with housing, more quickly housing participants, and so some of the newer staff there's a learning curve there too, I think.
Just as a reminder to everyone, I do encourage that we take a look at those kinds of measures, and if we're getting something really skewed like that, we might take a look and see if there's anything HMIS wise. My team would be glad to help do a deeper analysis and see if there's any kind of reporting defects or data quality issues that impact that measure. And then I'll just state that I have reissued our landlord engagement and recruitment RFP to help make those move-ins faster. So definitely share that opportunity if you are aware of any organizations that might be interested in taking that on. Did not get any proposals the first time. I do think I'm going to have some proposals, at least one this time, but I would love to have more to work with.
Could you, this might not be a question for you, it might be a question for you. Anyone can answer. When we're calculating exits to permanent housing and you have number of people versus households, is it based on the households exiting, or is it the number of people? Especially when you have households that have multiple adults, like how is that calculated?
I want to say it's in terms of persons. I would have to double check just to make sure I'm not misstating, but my belief is that it's a number of persons that have exited to permanent housing, not necessarily on households.
Yeah, it is
because sometimes there might be individual household members that exit to a different destination than other household members. If somebody leaves the household because they go to jail or they go into treatment or some other kind of setting, I'm 99% sure that it's calculated that way.
Yeah, it did.
I was like,
It
I
is.
think I'm 100% sure because that's
Yeah.
happened with us.
It's just since I'm no longer the one working with
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
on a daily basis,
Yeah.
I just
I
want to
know
double
that,
check.
yeah, just in trying to work with, like, within our EFH program.
And it is because
When we-
you and I have had conversations about if somebody joins the
Household.
household afterwards
And then they
has
break
their
up.
own issues
They get
and-
kicked
yeah,
out.
Yes.
So
So
Yeah.
yes, it is.
It's
Yeah.
the additional
Yeah.
household member and not the actual referred.
Yeah, because
Yes.
I had
Yeah.
when we were trying to calculate with EFH in terms of households, I always had to go in and manually figure out, like, okay, which households, like, exited, because you can't, it just has the people and they don't match them up with the households, and you kind of have to do that on your.
I think the
manual.
example of Do Beginnings having some household members added to a lease or a program that wasn't the individual referred is something for us to kind of keep in mind too, that sometimes it may not be just the challenges in working with the individual client that was referred to the program, but how they define their household and what issues might be absorbed. And as part of that, it means a larger case management burden.
That's why I always have a lot of notes on my presentation. Like, the number's this, but.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for this program? Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Greenhouse 17. Is that going to be you today?
It is me.
Okay. So you're presenting on the emergency shelter.
Correct.
Yes. Take it away.
Thank you. So I think most folks are sort of familiar with Greenhouse 17, so I apologize for any redundancy, but we're the primary program and shelter program for Central Kentucky. So we serve 17 counties, Fayette and the 16 surrounding. We're part of the statewide coalition, so there is one shelter program throughout the state of Kentucky, the Commonwealth, in every area development district. And through that, we have requirements to kind of fit those needs. And then as far as this grant goes, we do have 24-hour crisis intervention. So we do have a 24/7 crisis line that is open 365 days a year. We do have storage for residents that need to come in on property. This is incorrect. So we do have service animals are welcomed. We do not use our kennels anymore. So I brought that up at the last time, I think, that I presented. So we just bring people's pets in now. So if we have space, pets can come in. If we don't have space, then they can't. And they do have to be available to community living. So I can't have vicious animals, but at the moment I do have a rabbit and 5 dogs at Greenhouse 17. There is no requirement for program participation. That's critical for Zero B, the statewide coalition. Our primary piece is keeping people safe. So if someone calls us and the assessment is that you are in an unsafe situation due to intimate partner violence, then we need to either bring you into Greenhouse 17 or find an alternative location for you to go. We cannot make requirements on your safety as to whether you've got to go to this many groups, and if you don't do your chores, or if you don't work out on the farm. So that sometimes can be hard in program service delivery, but that is sort of the core of who we are in shelter services. We do not drug test to come into shelter, and certainly a lot of our folks that live at Greenhouse 17 do struggle with substance use, but it is something that we partner quite a bit with different programs. Some of our staff, I think, even though they don't have credentials to be peer support folks, have now pretty much, I think, gotten a lot of familiarity with that, and so we really do work a lot on sober living plans, connections to either whether that's residential or non-residential or intensive outpatient, and we really hope that people will stay at Greenhouse 17, and there's lots of chances for folks to kind of get that together. We don't depart quickly at Greenhouse 17, which I'm very proud of. And we are handicap accessible. We do use language interpretation and sign language and have abilities to work with that. We do have the farm. I think a lot of folks think about Greenhouse 17 because it's kind of pretty and we tout it a lot. So we are out on 40 acres. We're getting ready in May. I'm excited to hear that the Center for Research on Violence Against Women will be finishing up their research on do people that work out on the farm experience Greenhouse 17 differently than the folks that did not. Was there a difference in their anxiety levels, stress levels, and PTSD and other benchmarks that they could focus on. So we're hoping to get really good feedback on that because I think intuitively we know it's really good to be outdoors and be in nature and get your hands in the soil, but we didn't really have anything to say that for our population. So we'll be hearing that actually really pretty soon. And then some of the language around it, just so for folks to know, we are in kind of what we call a phased programming. So when folks first come in, we call that their welcoming, and really that's like 1 to 2 weeks of just getting people stabilized, working safety plans, getting them settled, getting them situated. Coming to shelter is a really big deal, and it's a stress all on its own, and I think it's one of the conversations that I'm always wanting to have with this community here, and I hear Jeff saying it a lot, is the goal really isn't always to build more shelters and more shelters and more shelters. So if you're experiencing intimate partner violence and you have that stress, coming and living with 42 other people in that same stress is not always the best. So we do try to spend a good couple of weeks of just getting them sort of stabilized in that space. Do you need a protective order? Do you need to go to see a doctor? Do we need to get your food stamps going? Like, what do we need to get going? Once that part has been achieved as best that can be achieved, and nothing is, real black and white and all that, we then move into what we call the healing phase. That's when we start really getting into some histories of what their experience was like prior to the domestic violence, what brought them to Greenhouse 17 at this time, because usually these relationships have gone on for a little bit, so what brought you here now? What are your hopes and goals for your kids? Do you have hopes and goals of maybe getting your kids back, because some people come without their children? And then what are your other things as far as working on mental health or sobriety or education or jobs and housing? So that usually happens at that point. And then we call the next phase launching, where we begin to kind of go, okay, you got a housing voucher, or you got a job and you're ready to go back to Danville. That's where you want to go. So where are the schools in Danville? Where's your community in Danville? What's your connection? Start making that transition back out into community a little bit more. So that's kind of how our program lasts. And we like folks to stay with us about 4 to 6 months. There's no end limit, but our number is creeping up. So when you look at demographic numbers, our average length of stay now is 53. When I first started, it was about 35, 37 in the very beginning. So that keeps creeping up. And I'm curious about it. I'm just going to throw this out there. I have no facts, is what I'm going to say. But I've noticed in my 15, 20 years at Greenhouse is when people first came in, nobody had health insurance. Nobody could get access to residential treatment substance use. It was, if you were ready to go, you were on a 6-month wait. People can get in now really quickly. And I can almost guarantee somebody getting some sort of housing voucher by the end of their stay. That never happened. I think now what has kind of kept us a little bit longer is we really hate to depart somebody from Greenhouse 17 just to depart to another shelter, even though they've finished the intimate partner violence shelter piece, and they probably are going to get housing. So I think we hold on to people a little bit longer because it's a little more difficult to find affordable housing, and there probably is a voucher at the end of your stay, where before there probably wasn't. So we would be more diligent, and where are you going to go in 3 or 4 months? Can you go stay with an aunt? Can you go stay with your sister? What can we do? Can you have a roommate? Now we kind of hang on to them a little bit because we do think there is kind of that carrot at the end. I'm making that up, but I feel pretty confident about it. I think that's what we're experiencing, actually. So kudos to the housing and homeless folks that is happening, but I do think it's made our length of stay a little bit longer, which can be frustrating to the community, because I will say probably the biggest complaint you will ever have about Greenhouse 17 is you're always full. And it is really difficult for us to have someone who's been there for 5 or 6 months and go, you're just kind of waiting, and I think you need to go to Beacon of Hope while you finish this out. It just doesn't feel good to do that disruption. So getting people into affordable housing quicker is a thought, which I know is a goal of this thing, right? On demographics, a couple other things that kind of make me happy a little bit. I do think we have a varied folks that are coming. Last year we had several folks that identified transgender. It made me really happy that folks were reaching out and felt comfortable to call Greenhouse 17. People of color, people identify as Hispanic. We had several men that stayed in shelter. So I think the word is getting out that we're not just for women, even though I will say this primarily is a violence against women issue. There are men who experience this. Transgender folks are extremely vulnerable to intimate partner violence. So I'm glad to see that reflective a little bit. We didn't quite make our outcomes as far as like how many we thought we would have 300 and 175 folks. We were 253 and 152, but that's what I was talking about earlier. I think folks are just staying with us a little bit longer. Average length of stay 53 days. Going into permanent housing destinations, 53%, so we sort of achieved that a little bit more than what we thought. We talked about this at one of the last meetings about returning to homeless. We're not in HMIS, so it's a little hard, I mean, we're not comparable. It's a little harder for me to judge that. So these are folks that I just know have come back to our shelter. So they could have gone to Salvation Army, they could have gone to Catholic Action, so that number certainly could be bigger. It's just the folks that I'm familiar with. We don't depart easy. 7% is probably due to some rule violation, but we kind of say we're a non-rule program. That usually is, we might have had to Narcan somebody, we recommended that they go to treatment and they didn't follow through with treatment. Or there might have been a threat to another resident and we would really look for viable threat. Sometimes people in trauma can say kind of things, so we don't depart easily. As far as, well, this kind of goes into farm a little bit, and self-care items 100% have access to. I do like that we have fresh, healthy food lots of times on our menu. It's not as perfect as I would like to say, but it is rare that we don't have fresh fruits and vegetables in our meal menu. We'll develop age-appropriate safety plan. That number is a little bit low. Some of it is because it might be little ones, you know, and we're not counting it. And we do a safety plan on immediate entry when people come in. I just don't know that that always sticks in with folks. So we're really looking at after they've been there for a week or so, and we've done a pretty intensive safety plan. So I would say about 90% of our folks are that. Individual healing plan, that's talking about those phases, and I'm talking about what are your particular goals. We really say Greenhouse 17 takes its programming and leads it toward the person versus a person having to bend to our program. So what you might need as a survivor of intimate partner violence is very different than what you may need. And so we really try to craft what that looks like individually. We'll develop financial budgeting or credit repair. We have an OVW grant, Office for Violence Against Women grant. We partner with Jubilee Jobs. It's one thing though, I was talking to folks, I do think our staff could be much better about this. We have a tendency to refer out to folks for job placement and career kind of counseling, and I do think this is something that we could pick up on. We've just been very spoiled with Jubilee Jobs and other folks coming in, but I'd like to make that more part of what we're doing. Also increased in income, we're not great at tracking that, so that's a big goal for this coming year. Yeah, project inputs, yeah. I think I'm gonna stop now if you have questions. Yeah.
I thought I heard you say that you like people to stay 4 to 6 months. So did you mean weeks? Or
Months.
Months. Okay. So the average stay right now is still like way below what
It is,
would
but I
want.
don't think that's a good number. So we have a lot of folks that might stay for a week or two and then not stay. I would say folks that kind of decide that this is where I need to be, they would probably, you know, it's that median mode thing.
Yeah.
I think people that really say that they need to be with us and don't have alternatives, I would say that they tend to be there about 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to just continue to recognize that you guys do, in my opinion, take a very strong recovery-oriented approach, and I appreciate that. And just piggybacking off a couple of things that you shared with us, I really like that you all are doing some kind of a welcoming phase or period. We've been working on developing an onboarding curriculum that staff that do frontline services and different types of programs, including shelter and housing programs, will have access to. And one of the small modules that we have is around those who are maybe experiencing first-time homelessness or newly homeless. It can be very overwhelming, and I think sometimes we get so used to this being what we do every day that we might take for granted that it might be beneficial to the individual that's in front of us to stop, to take the time to describe what someone can expect from a process or from going to shelter or going to access a particular resource. So that's one thing that I really just wanted to highlight and draw attention to that will be part of our curriculum. I think that's really vital.
I think it's really worth, I don't mean to cut you up, but I think it's really worthwhile. There was a woman who used to be a director of one of the domestic violence shelters, and then she was head of KSAC, the Sexual Assault Coalition, Eileen Rechtenwald, and she said, one of the things domestic violence programs do is the first 72 hours are really great, and then after that you just go into general population and you're sort of forgotten. She goes, we don't do enough time in that first week or two when it's just so scary and you're acclimating to so many different families and personalities and all these kinds of things. And because at Greenhouse we don't have a lot of structures on families, it's hard to go, well, this mom has their kids go to bed at 9 o'clock, but this mom has her kids go to bed at 10 o'clock. Well, this, like, we kind of bend to letting moms determine how they want to do their kids. So that can even get confusing. And so anyways, I think we were forgetting that. We built that back in that couple weeks of welcoming, and now we actually do a weekly support group that is just on orientation of what it means to live in this space, because it's hard. I think it's
And
hard.
unfortunately, I think some shelters operate kind of on the opposite,
They do.
where the initial phase might actually have a lower level of support, and they're kind of waiting until, you know, someone's at shelter for 2 weeks before we initiate X, Y, or Z process.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are the possibilities if we were to take a page from that book and focus more on some really intensive front-end kind of support?
Yeah, and your commitment for folks to stay might be better too. So it's kind of like that average length of stay, that first week or two. If you can get them past that, they'll stay with you. Usually, it's that first part of, oh my gosh, you know, what have I gotten into? Yeah, good.
Other questions or comments?
Do you all kind of track during that first couple of weeks where people are going? Like, I would assume some are returning to relationship, some are maybe able to utilize family and friends or pull those things together. Do you kind of know for that larger grouping that's transitioning out within a week or two what their destination is?
We do. I don't know that I can answer that question on that first week or two. We do identify where they depart to, and I could look at that actually. I don't know that I'm finding a lot that return back to partner. Certainly some do, and people are still sometimes in and out of relationships. That was a big learning curve even for me when I first started a long time ago. I thought people are moving out, they're done with this, and it's like, oh no, we're having lunch tomorrow. Yeah, so it was just no longer safe in that home, right? And so we're just trying to figure it out. I think they usually can find friends or family that might be willing to take them in a little bit. We do a lot of Greyhound bus tickets. Can we get you to Columbus, Ohio? That's where your sister lives. So we might navigate that a little bit. But yeah, I would say usually friends or family.
Yeah, kind of a similar question. I was going to ask, we call it, you know, our readmission rate in the hospital, but like recidivism rate, do you all track that? Like, of your people that come in, how many are previous clients? Or?
Well, we do a little bit, but like for this, we just knew that I think it was 4. So I would like to try to be better at figuring out if they end up going someplace else. Like, do they go to another domestic violence shelter? I could figure that out probably. Yeah.
It's a bigger challenge for you all because it sounds like even across different DV shelters, you're not using a shared database,
We're not.
correct?
We're
Okay.
not. And we don't share information across shelters very well
Right.
either. Like, so our VAWA standards, our Violence Against Women standards are very particular on our confidentiality, similar to probably what medical stuff, you know, and so we don't share that information well.
Yeah.
One of the things I tend to find a little bit is financially I'm vulnerable. I might not be going back to the situation that I left, but sometimes get into really not best new relationships. Yeah.
We are working within our HMIS system and my team and Diane's team and their system to iron out some strategies that we can try to better do that within the limitations that we have around things like confidentiality, but seeing how we can potentially better help them identify if someone's returning to an HMIS participating provider.
Right. I was going to ask too, Diane, about you mentioned the safety planning that you do with all everybody who comes into your program, which I think is really cool. What kind of safety? I just went to a safety planning training at Code Red. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's a newer.
I don't think I have. Was it good?
Youth and adult. Yeah, it was good. It's like contact because each stands for like, it's an acronym: contact, delay decisions, relax, distract. It's like 4 quadrants. So yeah, I was just curious, like what kind of safety planning model or template you guys use?
You know, through the Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence Prevention Board, they have kind of a pretty good safety plan, but it's a lot of that kind of, the thing that I think it's the shortcoming of it is it's sometimes really based on the person that you're fleeing from, but when we're in that place of trauma and crisis, our decision making can be really poor, you know, so it's kind of walking a person through every little step of things. There's a woman, Sarah Buell, that I like quite a bit, and she's done a lot of work around safety planning. I'd probably say like she's like the godmother of safety planning way back in the day, and I believe she's out of Austin, Texas. We used to use some of her work.
Yeah, is her work specific to domestic violence?
It is.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And an EDV, the National Coalition folks, we use some of theirs, and then we actually just found a new. It's interactive, so it's a computer thing, and it kind of asks you lots of different questions, and it kind of goes both into emotional safety planning, coping mechanism safety planning, relationships and friends, and who your support system is, as well as the intimate partner, which I always felt the other safety planning missed a great deal because it's the other that I always got so worried about, you know. Like I'd see women who come to shelter, they've been there 2 hours and then they're going out with another woman they just met in shelter. And I'd be like, oh my God, you know, which I kind of knew that person, I thought it was okay, but it's like, you don't know that person, you know?
Yeah.
So having to trust others in situations always makes me nervous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be interested in the one that you were looking at.
Yeah, it's more, I think there's adult and youth, it's more of a focus on school age. I guess there was a bill that passed too about requiring safety planning, but suicide education more like in the schools. And like, yeah, I think schools might keep like actual copies of the safety plans of the students on file or start. I don't know if each school, I guess we'll decide that differently,
Right.
but I think like that just the concept of like universal safety planning.
It's something to think through, right? And just
yeah.
have a plan and think through the plan. Yeah. Coping pieces is a piece that I don't mean to repeat myself, but that's the area that I think gets really overlooked,
yeah.
that I really like to focus on when I'm working with someone.
Any other questions or comments? Just one quick thing. I really do appreciate your inclusivity, but I was wondering if maybe the title on your gender categories here should be gender and not sex under the demographics.
Believe.
So just something to know.
Thank you.
Okay, our last presentation is New Vista. I'm unsure. Okay, sorry. Would you introduce yourself, and then you'll have 10 minutes to present, and then we have questions.
Okay. Well, my name is Damian Campbell. I'm Housing Case Manager and BHA on staff for our Continuum of Care program. I'm here in Dylan's absence. He's at a conference, so that's who would normally be here. That's whose face you would normally see. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I've been with New Vista here for 7 years. So that's
it's been as long as I've been at the city.
it's been a while. So yeah, let's see. Okay, so starting off, I'm pretty sure that everybody is fairly familiar with New Vista and our program, but we are a PSH program. We follow a housing first model. We offer case management, peer support, and IPS, supportive employment, to our clients. We are the three, main parts on my team, or three main people on my team. Let's see. We also do, of course, offer connections to all of our clients to other New Vista services, whether that be, psychiatric care, therapeutic, primary care, substance use treatment, inpatient or outpatient. We always try to refer clients to as many services as possible, depending on what the client is willing to engage in. None of this stuff is a requirement. It's just other resources that are at the client's disposal if they wish to use that. Let's see. Target goal is usually to serve 15 households annually. In this past grant year, we served 17. 1 positive exit last year, over this last year, 2 from the fiscal year prior, and 7 from the year before that. Just stating that to say that many of our clients now are relatively new in a permanent supportive housing timeline perspective. So that is, I think that is the reason that we've kind of understood that positive exit has kind of went down from year to year, because a lot of them are still new and kind of getting their feet and getting their stability on track before they can be exited. We had a really good year as far as positive exits are concerned a couple of years ago. So we know that we're charging up for another one of those, hopefully sometime here in the near future. Let's see. As far as demographics go, racial and ethnic demographics of our clients, from what I was told, is closely resembles that of people experiencing homelessness in our city. So we have, let me cross back. I'm sorry, and I'm going back and forth between my notes and what is the handout as well. So yeah, 23 total serve, I'm sorry, and as I stated before, the target households was 15. We ended up serving 17. Of course, target individuals were mainly, most of my clients are usually single individuals. I would say over the past couple of years, I've seen an uptick in more like couples. I've had a family twice, but yeah, so we've served 23 individuals total, where the target there was also 15. And let me see. So as far as performance measures, our length of stay target at around 60 days or less. We came in just over that at 64 days. We believe that that is due to one outlier situation of a particular client that would only be out of one facility for days at a time, that I wasn't able to, meet up with and engage with all the time in between, either a hospital to jail to Eastern State, and not necessarily being able to work on getting her housed as quickly as we would have liked. If we were to remove that outlier from it, our length of stay average was like around 37 to 38 days. So well within the target that we were looking at there. Exits to permanent housing, target of 90% move to or remain in permanent housing. We came to 50% exited to permanent housing, 88% moved into maintained or gained permanent housing within the grant year. We were seeing that we were a little bit lower, of course, in that one, also due to another sort of anomaly situation with a household that actually split into two due to an ongoing DCBS case plan, and then randomly coming into a large amount of money where they felt like they didn't need the program anymore, so they both abandoned their units and kind of left, and there was another person involved in one of those households. So that kind of skewed. Of course, that's not normal. Of course, I haven't had many households that have split into two, first of all, and then on top of that to come into this large amount of money where they're like, we don't need you anymore, we'll just leave. So that was that. Let's see, returns to homelessness, goal of 5% or less. That was actually at 40, and that is because of that same situation where I was talking about with the one household coming to two, and where we don't have many households, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. Job, income, and growth, goal of 15, at 11 with that, which is pretty good. I think that is going up. We have a very good supportive employment specialist on our team, where we're getting to the point, I really don't want to say that, but we're getting to the point where if you are actively engaging with her, I am almost certain that she can get you a job. Now, if the job works out, or how much you're willing to put into it in order to make sure that you retain said job, that's a different story. But she's worked quite well. She's gotten a lot of jobs for a lot of individuals that did not think that that was a possibility for themselves starting off. So I'm proud of that. Let's see, job, income, and growth. Let's see, increase for non-employment. That is exceeded usually for our individuals that have Social Security benefits and things like that. Cost of living increases annually, so that is something that is in the positive there. Let's see, job, income, and growth, new increase earned for leavers. Done that. That was one of the reasons why we're usually able to have these positive exits, is because clients are getting employed. Like I said, they're engaging with our supportive employment staff, and they are finding jobs, finding very well-paying jobs, and being able to go out on their own and being able to maintain those jobs. I just randomly ran into a client who had left the program a couple of years ago, and with her significant other, and saying that they were both still doing good, both still working and everything, like just randomly at a gas station. So they came over and thanked me. They apologized for being a little difficult during what's name, but just knowing that eventually they do see the light, but they were able to do that and still been holding strong for years after, program involvement. Let's see. Everything else timely, APR submissions, good there. No funds recapture, we're able to use that. Our finance department is good on staying on that, and we're making sure that we are actually using the money allotted to us in order to help the clients that we serve. Serve all subpopulations. Yes, we'll take anybody. We don't have a specific demographic, I guess, that we serve. Let's see, projected households or persons. I said still exceeding that in the ratio, and funds drawn down quarterly. Yes, once again, our finance team doing that. Things that we have been looking to kind of work on in order to improve. It's not like we necessarily have a hard printed up, 5-year plan or anything like that, or at least not that is discussed on my pay grade. But there is a plan to try to not necessarily incentivize, but to motivate clients to actually engage, as I stated before, with our IPS supportive employment staff. If you can actually go and give a valid effort and you want to work with her and you stay engaged with her, I don't want to guarantee, but I guarantee that this is something that will work out and be to your benefit. So trying to get clients not only to just seek out that service initially, but also stick with it and go through that process with her as she works with clients in order to try to get them employed. So just finding new ways to do that, and we've thought of different things as far as helping them with maybe like durable medical equipment if that is needed. Of course, that would also come in handy if that's something that they need in order to perform their job better. I had a client who recently received help with getting a hearing aid, which according to her employer completely opened up her personality. It was something that she was already doing good there, but it is something that has kind of anchored her in more in her place of work, and that has made it more enjoyable, up in the likelihood that she will stay with that job opportunity that she has. So that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions and comments.
Just curious, does the supported employment maybe also play a role in being able to serve kind of over your target numbers? Are folks maybe potentially able to transition or move on a little bit more quickly as a result?
I think part of it is, like I said, I don't have a super large number of my caseload that want to engage in supportive employment, but I know other individuals that we have moved off. Let's just look in the past 3 years. A lot of it has come from employment, and them getting to a point, and we still like to keep eyes on them for at least 6 months after even securing that employment to making sure that that is a good fit, that's something that they're happy in and something that they see themselves doing for a long while before we start looking at other options. But yeah, of those positive exits, I would definitely say that employment and income in general did play a major role in that.
And it sounds too like even though with that resource available that you as a program still struggle a little bit to get people to engage. Have you found anything that has been effective in getting people to engage that resource?
So normally I feel like clients normally come back around to it once they've tried everything else that they're used to, or within their normal wheelhouse of like, I'm not necessarily very interested in that. Of course, we don't push that. We just always let them know that it's an option. But once they tried everything and they're like, look, there's still some gaps. Of course, yes, I have a home, but I don't necessarily have the means to get the things that I need within the home. So I feel like there's always that time where they kind of come back around to it, and we always remind them that that is an option. So we try to send them that way at that time, but that takes a different amount of time for each client to come with that. So not everybody's feeling that. A lot of people kind of get in and they are content with having housing, which I completely get that. That's a large step to make from not having it to having it. Right. So they're okay at that, but eventually they get to the point where like, I want more. So with wanting more, if disability benefits is not a viable route, then we then go to there. But engaging in there, doing that work, and getting back into the job market, which is a daunting task for anybody, that's sort of the obstacle that we're overcoming with that. I see a lot of clients that I guess are like nervous or hesitant to do that. So I think that's what causes them to not necessarily engage wholeheartedly or not really want to engage at all. But
Thank you. That seems to be something that kind of is a theme within our presentations, is that struggle to fully get people to engage in employment and increasing income through that route. So I was just trying to be open to any strategies we can employ, and since you guys have a dedicated person, knowing that you still struggle a little bit on the front end to get that engagement doesn't help me have a lot of solutions,
right.
But at least lets me know that it's not solely a matter of that type of resource being there. We have to find some other kind of engagement or motivation strategies.
Right.
I'm kind of curious though, and I don't know if this is on your program, so we can skip it if we need to, but I have a question about it. So the person who does that kind of employment stuff, do they work quite a bit with the employers? Like, one of the things we've been wanting to do in another way is getting employers to be more, I don't know, understanding, empathetic about people who are maybe coming out of recovery, maybe hadn't worked in a long time, maybe are survivors of domestic violence, so that the workplace is a little more empathetic, I think, to some of those things. And I always love hearing the DV8 guy always talk about, he had to learn, like he knew that he began to realize that he was having turnover at DV8 all the time, but then when he started kind of building in capacity to understand and ask questions, his turnover rate really reduced. Rob Perez. So I'm curious if your person does some work with employers at all. Sounds like she has good connections with employers.
Yeah, do you mean like, so initially she of course does the legwork in order to help them with resume building, interview, working on interviewing skills, introducing them to the employer. She does have her own, I guess at this point, sort of network of employers that know her, know the work that she does, know how involved she is with each client. So they are willing to work with her. She also participates with OVR. So I guess there is sort of like a network of employers, but she does do a good job of kind of staying in the mix. Like I said, we do like to keep an eye on them for, I know myself, at least 6 months before we're looking at any sort of possible next subsidy assistance, or if the person is able to live independently without subsidy assistance. But she she is very involved in that, and she does check in with employers to see how things are going on their end in order to make sure. So if there's any sort of, potential issues or maybe concerns that the employer might have, she's checking in and trying to address that before it, comes to a boiling point. So
Yeah. So not like a formal orientation, but they still know that they have some services to kind of wrap around them, some support pieces. Kind of like what we do with landlords a great deal of, that people might feel more comfortable renting because they know that there's a caseworker or social worker kind of working with them.
Yeah, there's someone to work in, like sort of as a liaison between them and the client or tenant, employee, whatever. Okay.
Thank you.
One of the things that you brought up in the ongoing evaluation and improvement is something else that I think that we have a lot of discussions about the landlord network, and it said you have some property manager partnerships, but that you're working on those as well.
Always trying to grow those and doing everything that I can in order to keep those relationships good. So, and I think all of our experiences, pretty much everybody knows that, landlords is I won't say necessarily a small pie, but people talk to people. So in order to keep our name good and know the type of work that we're doing, they do have a sort of like a extra stamp of like, okay, well, New Vista is going to try to do everything possible in order to make sure that this does work out. Of course, things do, get out of our control, but just working in order to keep our name in good standing amongst the conversations that are happening amongst property managers and things like that, and also reaching out. We have a list from years ago that we try to update as much as possible, go through, call, check in with landlords. So growing that network of landlords that we currently have that are usually a very quick, it's a quick process to get that application in, get that unit, taken care of, inspected, and get a client moved in. We're just trying to grow that list of landlords where this is a very seamless and streamlined process. I haven't had any that have just turned us down because, we're New Vista, but just trying to grow that list of those who really want to work with us because we are New Vista.
Other questions or comments for this program? Okay, thank you. Last on our agenda is other public comments. Anything anyone wants to announce to the group?
I'll share. When I sent out the packet for this meeting, I did send out a flyer. We had talked previously in some of our meetings about trying to hold one of our meetings dedicated to trying to recruit new partners. So definitely, if you haven't already, consider sharing this. If you need me to send it to you again, I'm happy to. If you want to take my physical copy, you're welcome to. It's the only one I brought, but you're welcome to have it. Just thinking about the work that we do and how a lot of what we're trying to do involves other systems. Just continuing to think about who we can invite to the table and how we can make our work and our meetings more accessible to them. So this meeting will focus on giving a little bit of an overview of our values and mission. It will go into things like our structure, knowing what each of our committees does, what would be the right meeting that someone would want to attend based on the work that they do. But also, as we kind of do a review of some of our strategies, are there ideals or input that maybe we can get from new partners that we're not already looking at? So definitely please share that opportunity. We look forward to next week's meeting.
And then as the government, we have an opening for a housing advocate.
We do. I shared that by our mailing list, but it can also be found on lexingtonky.gov/jobs. Unfortunately, one of our housing advocate positions is currently open. Those advocates have been a great, tremendous support in terms of things like locating units when there's barriers, but they also do things like help families navigate other housing issues that might involve things like code enforcement issues, fires, a variety of different housing challenges. It's been a great, tremendous support both within the city, but to our external partners. So we definitely encourage you, if you have somebody that's interested, to send them to our website. You can also let them know my contact information if they have trouble finding it. glad to recommend how they can take the steps to apply.
I'd just like to say I work with KJC. And I've recently found a lot of folks, there's a lot of kids homeless here in Kentucky. Fayette County schools are looking at a record number of homeless children right now. So I just want to point out the city has dedicated several $100,000 to that population to help them, and I wanted to thank the city and thank the council for that. It's greatly needed.
Thank you. And I think that's an important thing that we just had a kickoff event earlier this week for a program that LFUCG is partnering with Fayette County Public Schools and Goodwill on. That program involves the McKinney-Vento office within the school system referring individuals to Goodwill. They'll receive some short-term rental assistance to help get into housing, but they'll also have full access to all of the Goodwill services and incentives, which can really help maximize that benefit. So I do appreciate you mentioning that. It's a really easy process. They really just need to connect with the Frisky or the school's McKinney-Vento point of contact. If they're unsure of who that is, they can reach out to TC Johnson on our board or the McKinney-Vento program. They just need to get some information over to Goodwill to move that application forward. We dedicated some funding out of this fiscal year and have another round of funding that's going to be available in fiscal year 25. We're really excited about that partnership.
Any other announcements? Okay. Our next meeting is on June 12th at 1:30 at this location. Just note that we're typically a little later in the month, but because of the Juneteenth holiday, we had to bump our meeting up a little earlier in the month. So just know that it's a little bit different on the calendar. And the presentations for that day are Bluegrass Care Navigators. There are 2 presentations for programming at the Hope Center, and then we have the COC planning grant. That's it.
If you haven't already, please do remember to sign in sheets. There's one over there and one over here.
And with no other things on our agenda, I will call us adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Did you read them? Nice to meet you. I'm Liz.